But speaking of dirty business,
you need to clean your ear out with something good every once in a while.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Well, that was about to get dirtied up here. I think.
Well, let me give the studio line, and then we'll get into and then we are going to shift gears. 603-250-6007.
I'm writing it.
603-250-6007. Now on the positive end of this, what we're going to because it's actually so the really bad news that has been going on that broke within the last 24 hours actually follows really good news for of course WWE. They've got their new deal with Netflix, which will begin in January.
If that doesn't get trashed.
If it doesn't, right, that could be in jeopardy now. Although I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, but all right, I won't say anything more yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jenny. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I didn't want to jump ahead too far.
Dave Meltzer actually yesterday talked about this on the Observer Radio, and the Netflix deal is done. There's an understanding that Netflix knew that something more was probably going to come out.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, see, I wonder about that because Slim Jim just pulled their sponsorship.
They put a pause on
overnight. Yeah. And
But I assume they're going to unpause it now.
Well, I don't know. Today's the event. I mean, we're talking about WrestleMania. No, where are we talking about?
Royal Rumble.
Today. Thank you. I have my names mixed up. So that's supposed to happen today. Slim Jim was the big sponsor. Now they're like, I don't know about this. So their logo's off some stuff. We'll have to wait until tonight to see whether or not they end up coming out of it or not. But if they don't, I don't think that's a positive sign for the Netflix deal.
I think the Netflix deal will be fine. I think
the positive part of the Netflix deal is it's not set to start for another year.
Right.
And realistically, like, I'm going to try to be delicate here, but it's early and the rock star hasn't taken hold. Is this really shocking to anyone?
Yeah. Not shocking that he has done heinous things as far as women are concerned, but how bad it is, how depraved it is. Yeah. I think that's pretty, as a woman, I just feel horribly sick the more I hear.
Well, let me just, okay. So I wanted to, the Netflix deal, for anyone who doesn't know, it's, what is it? I think it's
10 years.
It's like $5 billion or something. It's an outrageous sum of money for 10 years.
Which is unheard of. Usually these kind of deals aren't 10 years.
Netflix, by the way. They took a pay cut. They're making less money to be on Netflix.
Are they? Does it work out to less money?
Up front, yes.
Oh, okay.
I don't understand why they're doing these multiple platforms. I mean, the special pay-per-views are on Peacock. The SmackDown is on Hulu.
Well, you get more.
And then now Raw is on.
Well, you get more money that way on all these different. All these different deals.
Somebody who's supposedly fans of the show are having to run and chase to find all the different iterations. They should be in one place.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
It's ridiculous. It used to be that way. It used to be one place.
No,
now you don't know where to go to watch anything.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be a couple of months or so that Raw just has nowhere to live.
When the Netflix deal goes into effect, the network will move to Netflix.
Right. I did read that. Yes.
So all of the network content, including the premium live events, will be housed on Netflix. SmackDown is moving to USA.
Yep.
And NXT is moving to the CW.
Really? There's another one.
Yeah. Oh,
Jeez.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, Hans is in the chat room, says we are in the biggest streaming wars ever before. He's right. Everybody's scrambling for the same content, which is good for the content makers. That's for certain.
Well, they've been a very lucky company, WWE, because they signed. So when they signed their last set of TV rights deals, it was shortly before the pandemic.
Yep.
And of course, no one foresaw what was coming. but they signed what at that point were their biggest television rights deals ever. Had that not happened, I don't know how that company would have survived the pandemic, because those deals were worth so much money that's what kept them afloat, really. I mean, they probably would have survived anyway, but it would have been a lot tougher. So they were very, very lucky.
Well, it helped that DeSantis made them all special.
Oh, in Florida.
So they could actually work in Florida.
Right.
And then they did smart with all the different cameras that they had where people could end up being one of the heads.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually a good idea.
Yeah.
They actually ripped that off from the NBA.
Really?
Oh,
Did not know that.
Oh, that's right. I remember that now.
The NBA did that for their playoff bubble. And WWE just kind of ripped it off, but I mean, the NBA's just like, well, it isn't proprietary, and
right.
We're trying to run our playoffs in a compound in Florida.
There's some things that just don't work without an audience crowd. I mean, it doesn't hit you the same when somebody flips somebody and there's nothing in the background cheering it on.
Yeah.
Same thing for football.
The NBA didn't really care, but the rumor, and it's a rumor, is that ESPN didn't really care for it. And that's what really kind of led to everyone's asked, well, why didn't ESPN jump in on the new rights deal? ESPN was pretty much, there's been things WWE has done, and ESPN's just like, yeah, we're not doing it.
Right. Well, it's always a little awkward anyway for ES. I know that at various times they've had different segments and WWE content, but it's always a little bit awkward, I think, for ESPN, because it's, there's always going to be a segment of, not only a segment of their audience, which has dwindled over the years. I know ESPN's had a lot of problems, but also too, I'm sure there's a lot of people within that company who are like, why are we doing this fake stuff? This isn't real sports. Why are we getting involved in this? You know what I mean? I'm sure there's people in that company who really are resistant to doing anything with wrestling. So, but,
well, and also keep in mind that one of their top personalities has been very, very outspoken against WWE, Jonathan Coachman.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw an interview that he did where he was very critical.
It was so ESPN. I mean, there are people in the chat who may not care or too young to remember this. ESPN was the first cable company to have pro wrestling on its network. They had the AWA.
Really?
That's what kept the AWA afloat for much longer than any of the other territories that Vince put out of business, because they had the ESPN deal.
So that must
they had 1 hour a day on ESPN from 3 to 4.
What an odd time slot.
And so it kept them afloat for the longest time.
Wasn't come to think of it, wasn't World Class Championship Wrestling also on ESPN or ESPN2 or during the 80s?
No, World Class was not. World Class was simulcast by the Sports Network.
Because I saw it, I know the cable system my family had when I was a kid. Somehow I was able to see World Class because the theme song is forever etched in my memory. That
oh yeah,
it's like it's stuck in my brain forever.
I believe they were a part of TSN.
Okay.
Not a national sports network or a national cable network. I mean, and ESPN wasn't the first. Obviously, TBS was with World Championship Wrestling, but outside of TBS and Turner, ESPN they needed content in their early days.
Yeah.
And AWA already had filmed programming. So what's the best way to get content? Well, programming you don't have to pay production costs for. All you have to pay is for rights to broadcast. And that's all ESPN had to pay. But that kept the AWA afloat for their final, I would say, 2.5, 3 years. That and Vern constantly milking the equity of his lakefront home in Minnesota.
Yeah, Vern Gagne. One other interesting thing about the Netflix deal I was reading too that I didn't know initially is that apparently there's a couple of 5-year options worked into it. So, for example, at the 5-year point, it's a 10-year deal, but at the 5-year mark, if Netflix isn't happy about anything, they can exercise an option to kick WWE to the curb. And at the end of the 10 years, they have a 5-year option where they can extend. Netflix has the option to extend for another 5 years at the same rate.
Sounds like they were really smart about this.
Making it a 15-year deal if they want to.
What's really shocking about this, and this wouldn't have happened if Vince was in control, as much as I loathe and detest that man since an infamous November night in 1997. This deal wouldn't have been made if Vince was in charge, because it is a very, very friendly deal to Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone sees $5 billion, but it's over, theoretically, a 10-year period. WWE has to handle all production, and that's a very key part of the deal. Netflix doesn't incur any production costs, and what you said, they can extend it and opt out of it.
Yeah.
So it's a very friendly deal to Netflix, which leads me to believe that WWE wasn't getting the offers they felt were worth it, or that they felt were fair, which I believe is due to all of this Vince McMahon stuff. And once again, chalks up to his ego and selfish nature as a businessman. And I get it. All CEOs have to have an ego and all of this other stuff. Fine, cool. But there's a difference between self-ego and when your ego hurts the company. And that's what it's done for the last 2 years to WWE. They are a damaged product because of Vince.
There's the ego, and then there's sadism. Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, this is beyond anything.
Well, let me just say about that before we go any further too. So for anyone who hasn't been following, obviously because of the venue that we're in and the time of day and several different factors, we're not going to go into any details here about what Vince, the allegations against him are specifically. But you can certainly, if you're not aware, I mean, at this point, I mean, this is, it's pretty big news. If you just Google the name Vince McMahon, it will come up. What's that?
Or Janel Grant.
Or Janel Grant.
Right.
Yes. There's a very detailed article in the Wall Street Journal that is that I would recommend if people want something really in depth. Or I'm sorry, what?
Wall Street Journal has a paywall.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well,
if you just go into Google News, and
sometimes you can get around it.
Google News has an entire page of nothing but articles about this, and multiple articles are going into great detail. It's easy just to use a broader term, especially because we don't want anybody to say anything on air that could upset anybody.
Yeah.
To say that it's pretty sadistic and pretty bad, and if you do have younger ones who are wrestling fans, you might want to watch their news feeds because this is pretty bad. And I know you wouldn't want your young ones reading about the things that he is accused of doing.
As a man, it's like, I'm going to say as a man, not even as a heterosexual male, just a man in general. And I say heterosexual male because I date women, And I may not understand them, but I do understand how they should be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And as a man, it's disgusting to me. And it makes me ashamed to, at the least, be a man. And then secondly, to be a pro wrestling fan.
Well, and let me just say again, for people who don't know, if you haven't been paying attention, Vince was he's been accused prior, the sexual harassment and paying hush money and all kinds of things. But what has come to light in the past 24 hours is far beyond. It's far beyond that. I mean, I'll use a little bit of coded language, but if I say things like misconduct or assault. Or even
criminal,
these are
criminal level,
or even the term trafficking. Again, go ahead and assume some of the worst. It's that bad, and it's all very shocking.
And even assuming the worst, you're selling it short.
Yeah, I'm stunned. I'm truly stunned.
And I do want to add though, there are some text messages of evidence. From McMahon to Janel that are absolutely undeniable. Just undeniable, the things that he says.
My cousin
it's
and
pretty
I
disgusting.
were talking about those messages, Jenny. And I said, in my college days, you get into the frat boy mentality, and
I'm sorry to say, but this does exist in our society a lot more than people realize.
It does. I'm not excusing the behavior when I say frat boy mentality either.
Yeah.
And I hope no one thinks I am.
It's worse than that. I think that minimizes it almost.
But you get sucked into that, and I'm like, I've said some things that after I've sent the text or I've said it, I cringe. I'm like, this is so bad that I don't feel bad for the cringe stuff I've said.
There is this existence out there, and we've heard more stories over the last probably 6 months of women being found chained to floors, women being found in boxes, hidden away. That element does exist in our society. And when it's somebody like this, who has so much power and so much public notoriety, it's uncovering some of the darkest parts of our society that have existed since mankind. And unfortunately, that's just men usurping women, telling that happens. And when it's somebody like this who's so powerful, and he's quoted as saying things to her in the very beginning, like, I don't want you to just be an employee. I want you to have a better life here.
We should point out, because you mentioned the very beginning.
Yes.
The way this all started was apparently this is actually
grooming.
This is grooming. This is a very important part of the story, because apparently, and there's a pattern with him too with this. Apparently she was down on her luck.
Yeah, she's far from the first woman to ever had a negative.
She was down on her luck. She was struggling financially. She had parents who had
just died. She was their sole caregiver.
Yep. So
she was homeless.
So she was she was living in an apartment building where Vince also rented an apartment. So she
eventually he moved her and gave her a place to live. She didn't have a place.
And a luxury car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he took advantage of her.
So he would do
situation.
Things like when he was going to be around her, he would be, coming out of the shower in a towel. Oh, give me a hug. Give me a hug. Let me give you a kiss. Doing things like this to slowly groom her in, and then he would allow, and then go from there. And it happens in what they're talking about, and what happens in situations of abuse like this is called trauma bonding, where somebody is groomed and traumatized in such a way that they feel entrapped and caged by the other individual, that they can't get out.
Yeah.
That there is no way out. And it's devastating, and it takes what little self-esteem you might have had left away, and you become a puppet in that person's hands.
I read something in the Daily Mail articles, and the Daily Mail probably was the most in-depth because they're in the United Kingdom and they don't fall under rules of what you can print, what you can't print like we do. Mm-hmm. One of the disturbing parts is that he paid for surgery, cosmetic surgery for her.
Yeah.
And
but that doesn't, it's not just that, it's the leading up to that. It's I want to get this for you. Or, this would make that better. Where they groom, he pushes her in. No, I'll cover everything. I got everything. Oh, you're going to be so beautiful with this.
Right.
It's not like, hey, I'm going to get this for you. And she just jumps in. There's a process to this where that control takes over and she loses control of her own life and becomes a puppet into his hands.
Well, while simultaneously purchasing her silence as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's done this there's this past, he has a history, a proven history. There's multiple incidences, of him paying hush money to women. And, it's not a secret. And there have been other people implicated in this.
Oh, yeah.
And it reminds me of the story years ago about the airplane. The airplane story, the airplane ride from hell. Yep. Wasn't that what it was called?
The plane ride from hell, yeah.
Yeah, and that involved a particular wrestler that's coming back up again, too.
Yeah, Brock Lesnar.
Yep.
Well, also, let's look at the fact that, I just recently watched the Dark Side of the Ring episode on that. And interesting.
Yeah, I watched that one, too.
Ric Flair, borderline, or depending on your opinion, at the very least, it was borderline sexual assault is what he's accused of. You look at the guys that were fired from that plane ride, Ric Flair wasn't one of them. No. Ric Flair wasn't even fined. This is
Was Brock Lesnar? Was he fined?
No, Lesnar wasn't fined.
The big stars got to walk away with their little fun and games and suffer no consequences, therefore being told there's nothing wrong with that behavior.
Right. So, what I'm saying is that's the atmosphere that Vince perpetrates. And it was
acceptable though. You got to put this in the context of the era, okay? It was acceptable for men to rule over women in the office space. That was normalized behavior. I used to do agency work years ago, and I got sent to a lawyer's office, and I was supposed to answer his phone, type any letters he needed, and he called me into his office and had me come over to his desk. He wanted to supposedly show me something, and then he proceeded to put his hand on my leg and started to rise it up, to which I jumped aside, left, never went back, and got fired because I refused to go back. But it was normalized. They were saying things to me like, "Oh, he's just a little freshy, no big deal, Don't you want the job? Don't you want money? Don't you want to eat?" That's what's over your head, right?
Control, yeah.
100%. 100%.
Well, there's also more broadly too. There's the element of if you are the more powerful you are, the less likely you are to face any accountability.
Right.
So again, with the more powerful people on the plane ride, the more important they were, the less likely they were to face any sort of punishment for their behavior.
I was disgusted to hear about that when I heard about that with Brock Lesnar. Now that these new allegations are coming out with him, it's even worse for me.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's why we really haven't seen him out there as much as we were. Maybe they knew this was coming, so to speak.
He was supposed to return tonight.
Well, we'll see what happens. I would assume it's not going to.
It's up in the air.
They want Slim Jim back. They better not bring him in. I don't think that's going to help them with any of their sponsors if they have any named individuals showing up on screen.
The issue they run into there, unfortunately, and this is the evil business side of this, Brock Lesnar's contract is fully guaranteed. And
what do you mean?
There's no, out clause WWE has.
You sure
If
about that? They
fire-
don't have a behavior clause like they did with You don't think there's some kind of behavior clause in there after all the things they've gone through?
I mean, no. I mean, if they've never had one before, I doubt they had one when they re-signed him. I mean, they were still under Vince's control when they re-signed him. And I will say this about Brock Lesnar. As of right now, it's only alleged. There isn't any proof that Brock did anything. There isn't any text messages from Brock or anything that I've seen. Mm-hmm. It's all secondhand accounting from Vince. And I mean, I'm sure there's evidence if he's named, but the evidence hasn't been put out there against him, is what I will say.
Yeah, I think he's referred to in documents as a former UFC champion who Vince was trying to re-sign, so that narrows it down pretty quickly. My prediction is we do not see him again. I don't think we see Brock Lesnar again.
I mean, I would agree with that. But again, that's just another example of Vince hurting the business, because now, I mean, you're going to, at the very least, because you're going to owe him some money for doing absolutely nothing. But what's really interesting about this is the victim, Janel Grant, the alleged victim, because it's all allegations right now, is she said she was promised $3 million on this NDA.
Yep.
But she only got $1 million of it. When all of this started, it was due to, in the books, this was listed as a $3 million NDA payout. My thing is, where's the other $2 million? If you have $3 million listed as a payout, where's the other $2 million? This is where Vince could be in some major legal issues if the FTC wants to get involved, because that was information given to shareholders. That's defrauding your shareholders. That is a white-collar felony.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't there some kind of investigation going on anyway with the FTC or the SEC or somebody?
Launched an investigation headed by Stephanie McMahon Levesque, which, very interestingly enough, they never contacted Janel Grant.
I know. I read that. That was shocking to me.
Like, Stephanie McMahon, who got on her pedestal when they had the all-women's pay-per-view and said things like, women have been marginalized in our sport for so long, mainly by your father, who had a woman get on all fours in her undergarments and bark like a dog on national TV. But that's in the past. Just put herself as a champion for women in pro wrestling. And, you know, and she was one of them that changed the women's tournament from the Fabulous Moolah Invitational to the Mae Young Invitational because of the allegations against Moolah. Right. And it's like, wow, what a load of crap. If you cared so much about women's rights, Stephanie McMahon, if you really cared as much as you say, the first phone call you would have made while you were in charge of that investigation would have been to Janel Grant, or at the very least, her legal representatives. You made none of the above. You investigated, but to be fair, she did question her father and John Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Honestly, I think the only recourse for WWE and Endeavor is they got to cut ties with anyone with Vince and anyone that was attached to Vince during this time or came back when Vince did his hostile takeover to come back right before the sale of the company?
Well, from what I've read, that's their plan, right? Ari Emanuel says we're gonna get rid of anybody who knew anybody who knew anything about this, anybody who was involved, at all is out of here, is gone, which I think is what they should do. Anybody who knew about it and kept their mouth shut, and they should be gone. Get rid of them. Get them out of there.
Absolutely agree. This is disgusting stuff. And this is, if you look into the history of the WWE, WWF, and I don't mean the company with the panda bear.
Yeah, right.
There's a history of this stuff, not just with Vince, but with Vince's underlings. Pat Patterson, for many years, has been accused of sexually harassing male wrestlers, male ring attendants.
The Ring Boy scandal. Yep.
Nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Fabulous Moolah, who Vince loved to death, accused of heinous things. There's a dark side of the ring about things she did.
Yep.
To these women that were absolutely horrible and detestable. This is not one man. This is a culture. And when it's a culture, you got to tear out the foundation, bulldoze the house, and rebuild it. And I'm sorry if, there's some big name guys that are involved in WWE right now. Paul Levesque, formerly known as Triple H. If he knew of any of this, gone. Shawn Michaels, HBK, runs NXT. If he knew of this, he's gone. Undertaker, who's a brand ambassador, he knew about this. Kick Rock's dead man.
I hope. I hope none of those guys knew anything about
Nick
this.
Khan. I think Nick Khan's gone.
Really?
There is no way Nick Khan, as Vince's right-hand man, for many, 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 many years, being groomed to take over for Vince, didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way. With knowing that how close Vince McMahon keeps his inner circle, there is no way that this is Nick Khan had no idea.
Right.
I don't know how much he knew, but if you knew it was going on and you said nothing, you're complicit in the act.
I agree with you there.
This is awful. It's horrible and it's reprehensible. And what sucks to me the most is that this is the worst that's going to happen to Vince because of this. If we go back in the annals of history, the pain and suffering he has caused, and I said this in a private chat to both you and Jenny and a couple others, the family of Owen Hart, Nancy Argento, who Jimmy Superfly Snuka murdered, and Vince allegedly, more than likely, bribed law enforcement in Allentown, Pennsylvania to keep it under wraps. On down the line, Vern Gagne, Sam Munchick, the lives he ruined. Superstar Billy Graham, the bodies of the wrestlers whose blood, broken bones, damaged joints that his billion-dollar empire was built on. They're sitting there, and I can only imagine they're saying, it sucks what he did, but what have we been telling you?
Interesting,
for
yeah.
Decades.
Right.
What have we been saying? Look at what this man did to me. Look at what he did to my life.
Right.
Look, like, this is a pattern of abuse, not just on females, and I am not trivializing what he did here.
No, God, no. We're all horrified.
But you look at it at the abuse of his employees that he put through. You're hurt? Here's some pills. Go out and do your job.
Right. Well,
I mean,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Erich.
It's sad that it's took this woman to go through the absolute horrors she went through for people to finally realize what a degenerate, egomaniacal, scumbag, detestable human being Vincent Kennedy McMahon really is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is. It's quite shocking, and it's just awful. Well, Erich, we got to start to wrap up. We're going to be crossing into the second hour. We've got a great band coming in after the winter, but I appreciate you joining us this morning to talk about this. It really is.
And I really, Jenny, I want to thank you for adding, a personal element to it because, I don't know if you picked up on this. I'm a guy.
Really?
So, yeah, I can't give the female perspective on it.
No.
So, yeah. I mean, I really think, I think it's a discussion that could go any longer. And I really
there are just some things that aren't for morning radio. And some of these details.
I mean, this isn't for Matt Connarton Unsheathed.
Oh yeah, like I said earlier, if you want to know the details, or if you're, or I should say this too, for anyone who's hearing this and thinking that it's just more sexual harassment.
Oh yeah, I'm just going to sit here and agree with whatever.
I mean,
sure.
That's.
I will personally invite any of the listeners to direct message me, and I can send them the Daily Mail articles.
Yeah. No, what I wanted to say is for anyone who's just kind of assuming that, this is more of the same that has already come out. It's which was bad enough. No, this is far worse. To really understand the evil that Vince was involved in, you've got to see, you've got to read these articles. Like I said, this is not the appropriate place to get into the details of that. But for anyone who's doubting or sort of downplaying it in your own mind, or even if you've got like an old school sort of misogynistic, oh, boys will be boys type of attitude.
This is not that.
Look into this, and you'll realize pretty quickly this is really, really bad.
And all of this has come out within the last 48 hours or so publicly. It's beyond shocking. It's disgusting. It's evil. It's cruel. It's sadist.
It really is.
It's just shocking as heck that this is what's been going on all these years.
I just thought of this, and what disturbs me the most is that this will eventually go away. Janel Grant will get money out of this, but there's no dollar amount that can redeem her mental state.
Oh yeah.
Redeem her feeling of self-worth, redeem what Vince McMahon allegedly took away from her.
Yep.
There just isn't.
A lot of years of therapy.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
never ending.
A lot of credit goes out to her.
To having the courage
to say, exactly, Jenny, to say, you know what? No. There's going to be good that comes out of this, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to help people in the same position. She has said that's her goal.
Oh, absolutely. There's a really great article about her saying that and trying to make a space for other women to come forward. I mean, she's given details and things that people have suffered through similar types of things, but never talked about it publicly. She's opening that door and starting those discussions, and that's where we got to begin to make things like this stop.
Yeah,
right. And I mean, where it all starts is, Matt, you hit it on the head. We got to get rid of the old boys mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
In every aspect of society.
Yes, very much so. It's getting there. We're getting there.
We can't. Boys will be boys is no more when it comes to this. That's what got Janel Grant there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Is so many people saying, "Oh, it's Vince being Vince." Well, yeah. Again, tell that to Janel Grant in his litany of other victims, both of sexual misdeeds and other misdeeds.
Right. All right. We gotta go. Erich, thank you so much, my friend, and we look forward to your film review next week.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I look forward to doing it, and thank you for having me, Matt. Nice discussing with you and Jenny as always.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you, my friend.
Have a good day, guys.
All right, Erich, you got it. Take care. Bye-bye.